Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
HLN is premiering the first of 8 new episodes of Forensic Files 2, starting on Sunday, July 31st at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The episode is titled Blanket Denial. It's about a 24-year-old criminology student who left a Soho bar intoxicated. She was then found raped and murdered, as well as handcuffed, gagged, and wrapped in a blanket alongside a desolate road in East New York, Brooklyn. Experts found fibers from 2 fur coats and a rabbit-collared leather jacket that were on a quilt used to wrap the young woman's battered body.
Up next, her murder stuns even hardened New Yorkers.
It was a pretty horrific homicide, and we knew that the suspect perpetrator was still on the loose.
We begin tonight with the latest developments in a crime that has shocked this unshockable city.
The life cut short, way too short. That should have never happened.
The killer has attempted to strip all identification from his victim.
We didn't know the cause of death at that point. We didn't know who she was.
I can't find out who killed you unless I know who you are.
Detectives finally ID the dead woman and are led to a killer with a seemingly limitless capacity for violence.
It's just beyond belief. It's like a Jack the Ripper kind of guy. You know, just absolute animals.
Remember, that's Forensic Files 2 on HLN. The episode is Blanket Denial, and it airs Sunday, July 31st at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And just in case you miss it, it'll air again on Sunday, August 7th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Beyond the Rainbow is proudly partnered with Darkcast Network. I'll put a link to the Darkcast Network website where you can check out all the incredible Darkcast shows. Hey, this is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for children. I talk about horrible things that happen to good people, and often I'm very descriptive about it. Not only that, I like to swear, which might make some adults prone to horrified gasps. So, fucking proceed with caution. Hey there, Rainbow Warriors. Welcome to Beyond the Rainbow, True Crimes of the LGBTQ+. I'm your host, CJ. I had the best week not too long ago when my daughter and her boyfriend came to visit. We took some nature walks, cooked a lot of food together, played video games, watched movies, and they put in all the handles on my kitchen cupboard doors for me. Here I thought I just didn't have the dexterity in my hands to get the job done, but they assured me it was the cheap-ass screws that came with the handles. But they did it, and they didn't stop until it was all done. I am just so appreciative. And speaking of my daughter, last Christmas, I bought her 2 tickets to RuPaul's Work the World tour in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Portland listeners! And she's the one that told me, oh, go for the Portland venue. But since she lives in California, she's not going to be able to make the show. It's on September 11th this year, and I need to sell these tickets. The tickets are in the orchestra section, and they seem to be really good seats. I paid $240 for both. And I would love to get $150 for them. If anyone near Portland or plans on being in the Portland area and would love to go see RuPaul's Work the World tour, please DM me. Thank you, Warriors. If you want to connect, I'm on the socials. Just please address me by my name so I know you're not a scammer. I'm on Facebook as Beyond the Rainbow Pod, and just about everywhere else as Rainbow Crimes. I have a Buy Me a Coffee account at buymeacoffee.com/Rainbow Crimes. And I also apparently have a Ko-Fi account. It's very similar to Buy Me a Coffee. Rainbow warrior and badass named Muse bought me a coffee on Ko-Fi the other day. Thank you, Muse. You rock. With that, let's talk rainbow crimes and search for some unicorn justice. It's been a little bit over 23 years since 3 generations of one family were horrendously murdered in their home in Clydach. Clydach is a quiet little village in Swansea, Wales, but in June 1999, the village was anything but quiet when a family of 4 were murdered. This case, known as the Clydach Murders, became one of the biggest and most expensive police investigations in Wales history. The victims were 34-year-old Mandy Power, her 80-year-old disabled mother Doris Dawson, and Mandy's 2 young daughters, 10-year-old Kate and 8-year-old Emily. All of the victims had been beaten to death with a heavy fiberglass pole. After the family had been bludgeoned to death, and Mandy had been raped, most likely post-mortem, their home was lit on fire in attempts to destroy evidence. This happened sometime between midnight and 1 a.m. But the fire burnt out quickly, and it didn't do much damage. A couple hours later, the killer lit another fire in the home. Around 4 a.m., firefighters were alerted to a kitchen fire at Mandy's house. Once the fire was extinguished, rescuers were frantically searching for any survivors in the house. But what they found were the 4 residents whose skulls had been bashed in. It was clear to the rescuers no one had died as a result of the fire. There was a bloody sock and a broken gold chain found near the bodies on the carpet. Neither item belonged to any of the victims. This evidence would actually prove crucial later down the line. The detectives were certain the killer of the family knew the victims, or at least Mandy, and so the investigation began. Police started to rip into everything related to Mandy. While they were sifting through the most mundane situations, police learned that since her divorce, Mandy had been having a lesbian affair with a married woman named Allison Lewis. Allison was married to a man named Stephen, and he was a police officer. Word was that Stephen got wind about his wife's extramarital affair with Mandy, and he was fucking livid. So he paid Mandy a visit several days before the murder at her house. A neighbor witnessed a man arriving and leaving Mandy's home. She said he looked an awful lot like Stephen. Plus, that same neighbor, she heard the man yelling at Mandy, "Stay away from my fucking wife or I will fucking kill you!" And then he left. The neighbor also said Mandy was expecting a visit from Allison the night she died. And I'm not sure how the neighbor knew all that unless her and Mandy had discussed it. After the neighbor came forward to the police with the incriminating statement against Stephen and Allison, the couple was arrested and taken to the police station. Once there, they denied everything that the neighbor witness had told the police. But even with the denial, the couple was still the detectives' #1 suspects. Handcuffed and arrested in front of their children, 33-year-old Allison and 38-year-old Stephen were mortified when the police hauled them away. As detectives at the station were interrogating Allison and Stephen, they were also issuing threats to them. The detectives were telling their 2 suspects that they'd be going to prison for life because there was a ton of evidence proving they killed Mandy and her family. Even through the lies and threats of the detectives, Allison and Stephen, who were being interrogated in entirely separate rooms, they stuck to their stories, and they were each other's alibis. They told the police they were home in bed together the night of the murders and the fire. When the couple was finally released by the police for lack of anything substantial to hold them on, an angry mob filed outside the police department. And as Allison and Stephen were leaving, the mob was yelling names and all sorts of awful and mean shit to the couple. And they were most angry at Allison. The mob wanted her lynched. And to this day, Allison believes that the whole reaction from the police to the public was a homophobic response to the intimate relationship she and Mandy had. Now, what about the bloody sock and the broken gold chain that was found at the crime scene? I'm glad you asked, warriors. Detectives felt that the sock was used as a glove, and the gold chain was ripped off the attacker by Mandy, because Mandy put up one hell of a fight, and she was most likely the first person attacked that night because she was the strongest in that household. 18 months later, the broken gold chain was identified by an anonymous witness. The witness said the broken chain belonged to a 38-year-old construction worker named David Morris. David lived in a nearby town, only about a mile from Mandy's home. When David was picked up by the police for questioning, he had no alibi for that night, and his story kept changing. One of his most believable stories was he was getting drunk at a pub with his girlfriend watching rugby. His girlfriend got mad at him and stormed off home. He elaborated that he left the pub at 11:30 p.m. that night, and he was going to walk to his parents' house, which was 4 miles away. He then changed his mind and he went to his own home, where he arrived around 4:30 a.m. That's 5 hours David couldn't really account for, other than walking home. Oddly, David's timeline of events fit the timeline of the murders perfectly. There were witnesses at the bar that night that heard David talking about Mandy. He called her an old cow and unfit mother. Now we have David ties to Mandy. David denied to the police that the broken gold chain was his. He said he did have a gold chain at one time, but it broke weeks before the Clydach murders happened. It broke while he was working at a construction site. Then David's story changed again when the police interviewed David's cousin. The cousin said David had came to him to borrow money for a new gold chain. And then he bragged to his cousin about having sex with Mandy the Friday night before she was murdered. He told his cousin he must have lost the chain at her house. David came clean about asking to borrow the money from his cousin, and he told the police, yeah, I had sex with Mandy prior to the murders. And then David told them he was only admitting to that to affirm his innocence. Dude, I don't know, but maybe be honest and forthright from the beginning to affirm your innocence? I don't think this cat's the brightest crayon in the box. David went to trial, and the jury didn't like all the different stories he initially served up. The jury also learned David had been previously arrested for assaulting a man and beating the man about his head with a blunt instrument. By the end of the trial, the jury found David guilty of the Clydach murders. After several years of appeals, David was granted another trial. It seemed many had felt David was wrongfully convicted. At the next trial, the prosecution hit everyone with a bombshell. First, David's phone records proved the night he claimed to be at Mandy's having sex with her, he was actually home. So his consensual sex with Mandy claim was tossed out, putting more doubt in the new jury's minds. Second, science, and what was said to be a scientific link on that bloody sock connected David to the sock. Again, David was found guilty. Now, the scientific link was never called DNA, so I'm not really sure what it was. The police to this day are still holding it. David died in prison in August of 2021. There are still people out there, though, that believe in his innocence, including his defense team, and they're continuing the fight to exonerate David's name. I don't know, warriors. With this case, I have to say, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably an asshole killer who was enraged when he found out Mandy wasn't interested in him, but rather was involved intimately with a woman. And I don't mean Allison's husband, Stephen. I'm talking about David. Some straight men just can't deal with being rejected by a woman, especially when the woman would rather be with another woman. Rest in power, Mandy. Hey, warriors. I'd like to take a quick minute to tell you about something I've been drinking that has been life-changing for me. I'm sure I've complained to you before how long it takes me to edit an episode. Usually I'm at it for a whole day, and I've even taken up to 3 days to edit an episode. I just get so sleepy when I edit. Many times I think, if I'm putting myself to sleep, my poor listeners. But honestly, I have to hear myself over and over again and try to take out the weird mouth noises, the airplanes flying over, the loud cars driving by, and cut out too many long pauses, put in pauses when I sound like I'm racing through a thought. You know, the editing stuff. Magic Mind is an incredible little drink. It doesn't give me the jitters or make my heart feel like it's pounding out of my chest like energy drinks that give you wings or drinking too much coffee. Magic Mind truly is magical. If I take it right before I edit, I can focus and pop out an episode in just a couple hours, and that gives me the rest of the day for other adventures. I was a little worried I'd feel horrible after because I have high blood pressure, but the ingredients are all natural, and it leaves me feeling refreshed. Magic Mind contains matcha, which has L-theanine that helps increase focus and attention. Caffeine doesn't actually give you energy. It blocks the adenosine receptors in your brain, the neuroreceptors that tell you you're building fatigue. When the receptors unblock 1 to 3 hours later, if you're not doing another coffee, you experience a caffeine crash. L-theanine binds with the caffeine molecules in matcha and prevents the full blocking of receptors, reducing or dissolving altogether the caffeine crash and jitters you feel. It's nature's time-released caffeine. Seriously, Rainbow Warriors, I was pretty cynical when I tried Magic Mind, but I'm so glad I did. I get very distracted by almost everything on a daily. Magic Mind gives me the focus I need to get shit done. We all need this kind of magic in our lives. Go to www.magicmind.co/rainbow to check out the Magic Mind products. Use promo code RAINBOW20 to get an automatic 20% off your first order. And I'll put a link along with the promo code in the show notes. Well, I guess that makes it time for our True Crime Quickie. In this True Crime Quickie, crime struck 2 generations in one family about 6 or 7 years apart. And while I won't be spending way too much time on the first crime of the generation, I do want to touch upon it. Kathy Augustine was a Republican politician in the state of Nevada. She was a Nevada Assemblywoman and a Nevada Senator at one time. Then Kathy held the position of Nevada State Controller from 1999 to 2006, with the exception of a brief period in 2004. And that was when she was impeached for running an unethical campaign. What, CJ? A Republican politician being unethical? Absurd. Unheard of. Storm the Capitol, Margaret. That just can't be. Anyway, Kathy had 2 marriages that ended very quickly. One produced a daughter named Dallas. After her marriages ended, The mother of the young child married an airline pilot named Charles Augustine. Charles brought 3 children to this marriage with Kathy, giving Kathy 3 new stepchildren. Kathy and Charles were married for 17 years before Charles passed away from complications of a stroke. In just 3 short weeks after Charles died, Kathy married another man named Charles. This one went by Chaz. I don't mean to sound judgy, or maybe I do, but 3 weeks, woman? Holy hell! Chaz was a critical care nurse who'd been taking care of Kathy's husband, Charles. And maybe that explains why Kathy's next marriage to Chaz happened so quickly. Family, friends, and even neighbors said Kathy was a strong, healthy, and vibrant woman. Anyone who knew her knew she was made from iron. She was that tough. Which is why her death on July 12, 2006 came as a shock to everyone. Everyone except her husband Chaz, that is. Chaz had been married twice before Kathy, and he declared bankruptcy twice before as well. Chaz also had just received his critical care nursing license, only a year before caring for Charles Augustine. It had seemed like before Charles Augustine was in Chaz's care, he was getting better. He was getting stronger. But while he was in recovery, Kathy asked Charles for a divorce, and Charles refused to sign the divorce papers. And then one day, out of the blue, Charles developed septic shock syndrome and immediately died. No autopsy was performed on his body. After he died, Kathy received $1 million in life insurance money. After Kathy's death, it was learned Kathy and Chaz were having marital troubles. A lot of it was financial because Chaz was blowing through Kathy's insurance money she received for Charles' death. This statement came from several of Kathy's friends and her now adult daughter Dallas Augustine. Kathy had even kicked Charles out for a while, but then she let him back in just a few weeks before she died. A medical examiner said it seemed as though Kathy's heart had given out. FBI was doing a toxicology report on Kathy as well, and thankfully the FBI had stepped in. They found a paralyzing drug in Kathy's system. The drug had been smuggled out of the hospital Chaz worked at. After that revelation, Chaz Higgs was arrested for the murder of his wife and put on trial by the state of Nevada. A jury found Chaz guilty of first-degree murder. But I blew through that story really quickly because that's not the story I wanted to tell you. It's just the first generation of crimes happening to one family. The story that we're here for is about Kathy's daughter, Dallas, the second generation in Kathy's family. In 2007, at the age of 27, Dallas had been in a 6-year relationship with a woman who was 18 years her senior. The woman was Jessie McCaskill. After being together for 6 years, the two went to California and married on a beach. And then they decided to reside in a home in Phoenix, Arizona. In August 2012, after 5 years of marriage, Dallas was unfaithful to Jessie. She cheated on her wife with another woman that she had met in a bar months earlier. The other woman was now blackmailing Dallas. Dallas knew she had to do something before this crazy side dish blabbed about their affair. Dallas decided it was better to tell on herself and let the pieces fall where they may. So she sat her wife down one night in early August, and she confessed to her about her infidelity. The confession and the reception of the news did not go well at all. It was emotionally explosive. Jessie ordered Dallas out of their home. While Jessie was considered by most who knew her as a very forgiving woman, I think everyone has that boundary line of how far they can be pushed and what kind of things are deal breakers. Once Dallas was out of the house, over the next few days, Jesse, in tears, burned the couple's wedding photos. On August 23, 2012, Dallas went to talk to Jesse at their home in Phoenix. But Dallas did something much more sinister than talk. She shot Jesse, killing her. Then she turned the gun on herself in a murder-suicide. It's been said that Dallas may have suffered from mental health issues. She was never very close to anyone in her family, not even her mom, Kathy. I feel that may have contributed to any mental health issues she could have had. Rest in power, Jesse. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. And just a reminder, I'll be at the Pacific Northwest Crime Festival this October 8th and 9th, along with my buds Aurora and Angelina from Murder News. Still trying to get Sinister Steph from Sinister Story Hour to join us. We're going to have a happy hour meetup as well, and I'll provide details for that when I know the specifics. I sure hope to meet some of my warriors at this event. Until then, remember, it's not a crime to be gay, unless you're a murderer.